with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, I got to tell you, as an entrepreneur, I'm an American manufacturer. We have 5 factories here in this country. We produce a lot of products that's sold throughout our country and around the world. Just about every American retailer sells something from our company, and 80 countries around the world we export our products to. But I got to tell you, just lately, and, I've been a very optimistic guy. I'm an entrepreneur, so obviously I'm optimistic. You got to be optimistic to be an entrepreneur. But, things are just getting funky out in the marketplace right now. And for the first time since President Trump has gotten elected, and we've seen the market really boom, and we see it, going forward. We see all the job creation going on. We see the wealth creation going on. It is overall been very, very positive. But just lately, I don't know. It just seems like there's a pale that's over the marketplace.
I agree.
And on the consumer marketplace, because, that's a very big part of our business. And I can see the retailers and everybody's very jittery. Retailers don't want to stock product. They don't want to put their money down. I think that everybody's scared right now that they're going to buy product, and you got all these tariffs in the products, and the tariffs are going to go away. And then, all of a sudden, you got all this inventory you can't sell because it's overpriced. I don't know. Maybe it's the retailers are seeing that to consumer confidence, or people are not showing up in the stores and buying. But for the first time in many, many months, I'm starting to feel that the market is turning, and not in a good way. And you put on top of that not only the Chinese trade situation, which I think is a very crucial issue to get resolved, but just the American political system and what we're doing to ourselves in this country, and this impeachment thing just tearing us apart and ripping us apart. In the political elite in this country just don't seem to give a damn about what they're doing to our country. And it really, really disturbs me. It bothers me. I just don't know what to say.
Well, let me help.
Thank you. Make sense of this.
Well, here's the reality. The Democrats have been trying now for over 3 years to impeach, impale, destroy, humble, arrest, indict President Trump. Actually, since he came down the escalator at Trump Tower back in 2015. And nothing's really stuck and nothing's really worked. It's Teflon, Don, so to speak. But here we are now. We've tried Russian collusion. We've tried all sorts of things that he could do that's wrong and right. They've gone after his family. They've gone after his friends. They've tried entrapping people. They tried that and kind of did that somewhat successfully with Flynn and others. And all that at the same time that the economy was growing and things were looking better. And this president is taking on the rest of the world to make America a better place, and coincidentally, along the way, make the world a better place. Because when we're in a better place, the rest of the world's in a better place. It's sort of like in Latin America years ago. Brazil kind of ruled the economy of Latin America, and Brazil got a cold. Latin America got pneumonia. It's just the way it went, and that's back in the 90s and in the early 2000s. It's not that way right now, but what I've seen, interestingly, in the last few months is that we need a recession. Neil, we need a recession. We need a recession because it's the only way that the Democrats can take away an election from this president. We need to take away the goodness of what's been created. How do we do that? We give the idea of perception versus reality. And all of a sudden you hear in all the talking points on MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CNN, and all those other, left-wing, accolade jumping people from that side of the spectrum, saying impeach, recession, we're trouble, things are bad, not good. You know, the Feds got very aggressive a year ago when they raised the rates 9 times, which everyone knew was a mistake. They kind of admitted they made a mistake, and they've been backtracking a little bit and lowering rates, but not quick enough. So we have the Feds getting involved. Then we have the recession thing again. That came out, we must be in a recession because, after all, everyone's becoming an inverter of bonds. Everyone from, coaches in high school to secretaries in restaurants are now saying, well, there's a recession because we have an inversion in the bond market. Not that they understood it, but they heard that. Point being, Neil, it's sort of like the folks on the left, and this is a great segue to our guest, has taken the soul out of the market. They've taken the soul out of the market. So if you constantly hear this and hear the tariffs are bad and this is happening and that's happening, people start thinking, well, wow, maybe I should be in a protective environment. Maybe I shouldn't spend as much money. Maybe I shouldn't invest right now in something. So again, it goes back to a perception versus the reality. And it doesn't matter what the reality is. They can make the reality what they want it to be because they believe the concept and the perception that they're being fed every day, 24/7, 365 on all this other media. Does that kind of give a clue what's going on?
Well, thank you for that.
That's my top line thinking. I can't wait to hear our guests talk about this.
Well, let's bring him on right now. We're very pleased to have with us Richard Ferguson, who's formerly a senior executive at Hewlett Packard. He's also the author of 6 spiritual books. Richard, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So, you heard, my take as an entrepreneur and what's happening in the marketplace. And, it's just, there's just so much toxicity. I mean, there's just so much negative stuff. And, it's just the vibe is just very bad. And I don't see it getting better. And it's going to get very ugly. I mean, it's going to get very, very ugly. And it's a very hypocritical process. The Democrats are really beating up on Trump, but they're beating him up on things that they have routinely done and have done, just in the last couple of years of the Obama presidency. I mean, you want to take a look at Hillary Clinton, you want to take a look at Joe Biden, you want to take a look at Barack Obama. I mean, so much stuff has gone on in our country, and it just seems like each political party is out for themselves and not out for the people. And that's just wrong. It's ugly. It's dangerous. So tell us, from your perspective, what's going on.
If you look at the Democrat Party today, they really have nothing constructive to increase the well-being, the health, and the security of the American people. Not like it was 40 or 50 years ago. I remember as a child watching TV, there was a Democrat on TV called Everett Dirksen. Some of you might remember him.
Sure.
I won't tell you how old I was back then, but long time. Anyway, but they would sit down with Republicans and come to compromise agreements for the health and well-being of the American people. But that has gone by the wayside. Now everything is a fistfight, and that is symptomatic to one side of the fistfight wanting dominion over everything, very much like Lucifer became Satan. He wanted dominion. That's not allowed in God's kingdom. So that's the fundamental theological perspective of things. And what happens now is that the Democrats, realizing they have absolutely nothing positive to offer the American people, the Republicans do, Donald Trump does, but the Democrats do not. So what do? They have to resort to dishonesty. They have to resort to all sorts of hoaxes, like the climate change hoax and their Green New Deal. I've got scientific evidence here at home that I've collected that prove that the climate change thing is nothing more than a hoax, every which way you can think about it. If you apply any analytical analysis to the reality of what they call climate change, it does not exist. But nonetheless, what they're doing is they're using the climate change hoax as a lever in order to implement socialism in our country. Socialism has never worked in the history of mankind. All it does is produce pain, suffering, agony, and death. That is true. Hundreds of millions of people have died because of communism and socialism, yet these people want to do it. Why? Because they think that is the only way they can trick people into voting for Democrats by also giving away free stuff, free medical care, free college, universal basic income, and so on. All that is redistributing the wealth created by the productive people of our society and giving it to the people who have not produced anything, and as a result, killing any incentive people have to be entrepreneurs like yourself. Why would I bother?
Richard, hey, we're gonna have to cut it there. But thanks for your perspective. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and this is a very, very, very important topic for our country, and we got to listen to all the voices out there. And we really appreciate your thoughts. Richard Ferguson, formerly a senior executive at Hewlett Packard, and a very successful author of spiritual books. Richard, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. God bless to everybody.
Thank you. Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I have a lot more to talk about. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So Richard really kind of put it out there, and I think that this is really it. It's socialism. It's really socialism, and socialism hasn't worked. It will never work. And what we have one major political party telling us that socialism is the way of the future. And by the way, in the Democrat Party, it's the socialists who are winning. I don't see how Joe Biden, recovers from what's going on. I think, who wins out of this? I don't know. For President Trump, does he win out of this? I think Elizabeth Warren right now wins. I think that she's now certainly the in the lead of the Democrat primary. I think her polling numbers are going up. It just seems like she's getting a lot of momentum. And whatever, Joe Biden was caught with his hand in a cookie jar. Whatever went on, to have a son. And look, we all love our children. We want the very, very best for our children. But when you're at a very senior level in the American government, you're not supposed to overtly use that to promote the business interests of your family.
Yes, well, exactly that. And now, then you shouldn't brag about it. I mean, if you're going to do it, think for a second. We all know Biden's not a very smart guy. I'm sorry, he's not. But then he went on some talk and he bragged. Well, SOB, 6 hours later, the SOB's fired. Are you kidding me? He admitted it in front of millions of people.
This isn't Jimmy Carter and Billy Carter with his Billy beer.
Oh, this is another whole level.
This is another level.
Billy Beer can say, listen, give him a 6-pack, put him in the other room with Uncle Tony. He'll be all right. The two of them are drunks. They're going to enjoy themselves a lot. I think there's a color TV. There's a color TV. Yeah, there's a color TV in there. They'll be happy. They're going to watch some football. Make sure there's some peanuts. I heard he likes them. You know what I mean? This is not the same thing. This is a vice president of the United States. It's making empirically clear, if you look at what he said, that this guy is going in 6 hours. You're not getting billions of dollars of American taxpayer money. And by the way, I'm counting. This is like my cousin Vinny. All he had to do is stamp his foot. Well, maybe this isn't a good time to bring it up. I was waiting for that. So, no, it's not good. Or his son takes another trip with him, that's the Ukraine, and goes to China on Air Force number 2. Or this is like, let's make a deal. Wait a minute. Now I understand it. You have Air Force 1, Air Force 2, Air Force 3. So maybe with the Biden family, it's like, hey, Monty Hall, let's make a deal. Behind Air Force 1, we have this deal. Behind Air Force 2, we have that deal. In this case, he got $1.5 billion. That's the deal. After he was in China with his dad. This is just unbelievable, Neil. Unbelievable that this could happen.
So now we're talking about, what this is doing to our country, and it's going to be a very, very long road, I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a long road. And what's going to happen with our economy, Rich? I got to tell you, I'm an optimistic person, but I see a very big cloud over us. I mean, we're not going to be talking. Let's say what we're not going to be doing. We're not going to be talking about moving this country forward. We're not going to be talking about infrastructure. We're not going to be talking about jobs. We're not going to be talking about making our country more strong, more prosperous. All of that stuff is out the window. Those who are going to be glued to their televisions, watching this thing unfold, it's not for positive things. It's just tearing the country apart. And nobody's going to be convinced. The liberals and the progressives are going to continue to think what they think, and conservatives and those who support President Trump is going to continue to believe what they believe. No minds are going to be changed out of this whole thing.
Well, I agree with that.
No minds are going to be changed. And you're going to end up with a very, very partisan process. You're going to, it was going to be like Obamacare, whatever the votes were,
100% Democrats, 0 Republicans.
That's right. Whatever votes in the House, I forget what it was at the time, 238-0, right? I mean, nobody voted for it on the Republican side. And that's when you have things that rip the country apart.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right.
If you can't get something bipartisan on something as important as this, you don't do it, right? I mean, even though if you feel from your perspective that, the guy's got to go, you got to do it in a bipartisan way. I mean, if you can't get there, then beat him at the ballot box.
Well, isn't that the whole point of our system? Every 4 years, we make a decision which way we want to go. We want to go this way, they want to go that way, but you vote on it.
You vote on it.
You don't attack. Listen, here's the thing. I think you're very, very correct. The sadness in all of this. Here's an example. USMCA, the US-Mexican-Canadian Trade Act that we're talking about. It's bipartisan, Neil. It was, proposed. It's got great support, but Nancy Pelosi won't bring it to the floor. Why is that, Neil? She won't bring it to the floor because she doesn't want to provide a win. She doesn't want to provide a win because she doesn't want to help Trump win. Now, if that were passed, what happens? Job creation, farmers are doing better, our relationships with Canada and Mexico are doing better, there's great movement forward. Everyone wins out of that, particularly the American people. But we're not going to do that. See, I don't believe that's really going to get passed right now. I think it's going to get completely sidetracked until we figure this whole thing out. I agree. So, hence, your theory is 100%.
Well, thank you for that.
I just want to tell you that.
Well, we're going to continue on with trade policy. We have Hewlett Packard coming on from R Street Institute, and we're going to talk about specifically agricultural products and American agricultural exports. And is China now going to become a buyer? Don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Very big welcome to you today. Thanks for sticking around with us. This is your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, well, you just brought up USMCA,
I know.
You brought it up. The U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement. And NAFTA, I guess it was, you got to kind of get used to NAFTA, but now that you're used to NAFTA, now we got to forget about NAFTA. Mm-hmm. We got to say the USMCA.
Right. Exactly. I kind of like that.
There you go. There are some very, very positive things that our Congress could be doing right now, and that's leveling the playing field so American companies can compete internationally on a fair and level playing field. And the USMCA would do that, but not only for American manufactured goods, but also American agricultural goods, as well as American services. And by far, Canada is the largest buyer of American products, and Mexico too. I mean, very, very, even a small country like Mexico buys more American products than Japan, right? more products than Japan because we have access to the Mexican market and we do not have access to the Japanese market in a very fair and level playing field. So trade agreements do work. Let's get that out there. Trade agreements work. We got to have more trade agreements, not less trade agreements, but they got to be good agreements. And they got to cover all issues in the overall relationship, certainly the financial relationship between countries. And USMCA does that. We're very pleased to have on with us right now Hewlett Packard. He's from the R Street Institute, and he's very much involved in trade policy. Clark, welcome to Made in America.
Thanks for having me on.
So we got a lot to talk about. Let's talk about agricultural products right now. It looks like China has started back to buying American agricultural products. Is it meaningful what they're doing right now? Is it because America really has the best products and they don't have another choice? Are they trying to send a sort of signal to the U.S.? Hey, look, we want to do a deal, so we're going to start buying agricultural products. So maybe you'll see that we have goodwill here and good intentions. I mean, what is up with the Chinese right now in American agricultural products?
That's a good question. I do think that China is interested in buying more product for a number of reasons. First of all, yes, I think they're trying to smooth over and maybe set the foundation for potential agreement in the coming months between the United States and China. But the other thing that they're dealing with is they have a swine flu outbreak. And so they have recently lifted or lowered tariffs on U.S. pork export. So, and obviously they're a big buyer of American soy. So, yeah, I think that any sort of liberalization or market opening and buying of American goods by the Chinese is a step forward because I think so many farmers and ranchers are really struggling right now for a myriad of reasons. But the trade pressure right now is certainly hurting them.
Okay, and I agree with that, and I do find it interesting, of course, that with this, it's really ironic. I mean, didn't they buy Smithfield, the pork producers in Virginia? I think it's Virginia. Did I get that right? Number of years ago, there's a big fight about that the Chinese were coming over here to buy this very well-known, iconic pork-producing plant. A Smithfield ham is if you're a Southerner,
like you,
south
by
part
way of New York City,
south part of Gramercy Park, yeah. A Southerner, then you like Smithfield here. But 57% of the pork in the world goes to China. I mean, it's very, very important for them. So, but let's talk about this for a second. We must produce something. I guess that's the bottom line. And that was on this topic of discussion this week as well, when the market took somewhat of a hit. The tariffs were going on. We're not sure what's happening. We must produce something. So having said that, and having trade deals, do you feel, number one, getting back to Neil's point, USMCA, do we have a shot at anything of that happening in the next 6 or 7 months? That's very important to the farmers. And concurrent to that, I would think, would have to be some discussions picking up again very, very soon in the next week or so with the Chinese. Do we get a short-term deal? Do we get a shot of having any deal to alleviate this back and forth and this up and down and this yin to yang, pardon the pun, every other week?
Yeah, that's certainly the million-dollar question. Let me start, obviously, with the USMCA and the NAFTA issue. I hope so. I hope that the members of Congress on both sides of the aisle can come together and get something done here. Obviously, the impeachment thing is the big elephant in the room that, can Congress still function? Can it get anything done? Out in the press, Republicans are saying, look, Democrats aren't bringing this up. But then, I read quietly there are these negotiations going on between the Trump administration and the House Democrats. My hope is that we can get to yes on the USMCA, make some changes that Democrats want to see, but ultimately get to yes. And I think that this will be a big test. I mean, obviously, this is the big legislative issue that the president wants handled before the 2020 election. And so politically, I think it's important for him, but also just for the American people, providing some certainty, sort of convincing farmers and ranchers that everything's going to be okay. these markets between the United States, Canada, and Mexico will still be open. The issue of China is obviously much more complicated. The United States has very serious, long-standing complaints about how China engages in commerce. And again, those are very well founded. But farmers and ranchers are really bearing the brunt of this on the U.S. side. Certainly, maybe some products are a little higher or, more expensive at Walmart or, sort of consumer goods are slightly more expensive. But ultimately, it's the farmers and ranchers who have lost market access because of Chinese retaliation. Now, so the question is, can the United States and China come to an agreement? My hope is the answer is yes. But I would caution that any sort of agreement is not going to be a silver bullet. It would be sort of a thing, an agreement to hang your hat on for the next year or so, 2 years. But this is China's rise, long-term rise, and its standing in the world continues to increase. And so that, to me, is the much more serious long-term issue. But if you're a farmer and rancher, you're looking for any win you can get right now. And so hopefully you can get some more soy and ag product buys by the Chinese.
Hey, Clark, we got to take a quick break. We're talking to Clark Packard from the Arch Street Institute. Still a lot more to talk about. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're talking with Clark Packard from the Arch Street Institute, an expert on trade policy. Clark, you mentioned about the longer-term issue between the United States and China. It's a very complex thing. China, is a very proud country. We're a very proud country. They're very patriotic and they believe in who they are as a people and their culture and what they've been able to accomplish. They've had their ups, they've had their downs, just like we have. But they are a powerful country. They are a powerful country. You can't deny that. So the fact that China is going to be a powerful country in the world, we're going to have to come to terms with that. And it doesn't have to be against American interest that China is a strong and prosperous and powerful country. I mean, this world is a big place, and it's not going to be America dominating the world like we were immediately after World War II and for many years afterwards. Hey, look, it was the Soviet Union, and ultimately it was our ideas, it was our culture, it was our economic freedom that won. So if we're really confident about ourselves and who we are as a people, there will be countries that rise and fall. But if our ideas are superior, and if we're very confident of who we are as a nation, why should we worry if China is a strong and prosperous country?
Yeah, that's obviously a good point, and it's a complicated issue. To unpack that a little bit, I would say, yes, the United States needs to remember certain core fundamentals that we do better on certain things than the Chinese do. We're better on respecting human rights, for instance. We have a better environmental record than the Chinese do. We are freer economically and politically. And those things really, really matter. Where there is a little bit of a problem is in how China engages in commerce, right? So things like IP abuse, forced technology transfer. So if you want to open a plant in China and do business there, the Chinese Communist Party requires you to turn over sort of high-level technology.
But I'm sorry, Clark, but all of that could be negotiated, and I think that they were very close to having an agreement on that. And I don't think that the Chinese is the one who's out there promoting for free trade and open trade and a world that's, just working together and all of that.
Well, Neil, they portend to be supporting that.
But they have to, and they have to realize that, hey, look, I was in Asia back when the Taiwanese and the Koreans, and they were using their currency and they were just exporting everywhere. And no matter what the U.S. government said, it didn't matter. I mean, they were just coming in and decimating industry after industry and industry. And remember, it wasn't the Chinese who decimated the industries. It was the Taiwanese and it was the Koreans. And then it was the Taiwanese moving their factories to China. And before them, it was the Japanese, right? So, they didn't invent this. I mean, but then when they were called to the carpet and said, look, you're not going to do that anymore, their currencies revalued and they became a much more open and a much more transparent marketplace. And they did. And, so what I'm saying is that China will realize that if they're going to be part of the global trading system, that they're not going to be able to get away with that. And I think that they will be able to come to an agreement on it. But Clark, is that enough? Is that enough that we can agree to that? Or is there a bigger issue there that is so fundamentally that we're at odds with each other that it doesn't matter about intellectual property, or it doesn't matter about a trade transfer or technology transfer? There's something bigger than that.
I think it's both. I think that ultimately the question is, how do you make China a responsible actor? Because, it's not just the United States that has these concerns. It's the Europeans and the Japanese have very similar concerns about certain ways that China engages in commerce. But you're right in the sense that there is this broader narrative in this construct, which is, the United States has long been a believer in sort of the open rules-based trading system. And so that system that we devise is meant for sort of market-oriented economies, but can it also sort of tame the worst mercantilist
Japan's not a market. Hey, but Clark, Japan is not a market-driven economy, but yet they're one of our biggest allies. Germany's not a market-driven economy, yet they're a big ally.
There is a difference in this. I mean, you're dealing.
Let's hear it. You're
dealing with ideology. You merge ideology. You merge social communist ideology, Neil, in the Chinese market, in the pseudo, capitalist communism that they export. So I think you have a different set of rules with them.
But this isn't communism. This isn't your grandfather's communism. I mean, these people are more capitalist than we are.
They're more capitalist, but you try and do something like, we've all been to China many times. China is still a communist country with a set of rules.
It's totalitarian.
I'll buy that. I'll accept that. But so when you're talking to them, that ideology is the foundation of where they want to go 20 years out, 30 years out. So when you're dealing in this, I'd like to hear our guests comment on this the last minute. Where do we go with that? Because that kind of underpines exactly what they're doing, where they want to be.
Clark, unfortunately, you got 15 seconds, and we got to.
So if you could explain that, Columbia University wants to talk to you.
Or agree to come back next week and explain it to us.
Yeah, obviously these are very serious and complex issues, but little more complex than 15 seconds. But thanks for having me on.
Okay, Clark, talk to Phil. Let's get you back real soon. We really enjoyed the conversation. A lot more to talk about. Thanks for coming on the show. Clark Packard from the R Street Institute.
All right, thanks, guys.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So let's get right back into it. A very, very good discussion. So, Rich, the show's gone by very quick. We got a few minutes left, but so much more to talk about.
Well, at very least in this segment, let's solve the problem with China. Go.
Well, we're not going to do that, but at least we can frame the problem and see if there is indeed a solution at hand. My point is that, all countries have a right to prosper and to exist and to pursue their own destiny. Now, yes, there's human rights, and we must respect the environment, and we must respect the planet, and we must be good neighbors. We must help and we must encourage each other.
And we must give up our straws. Countries. No plastic straws. Just saying. A simple little thing like that can save the world.
We're not going to go.
I had to say that
right
to
now.
you, Neil. Go ahead.
But but with China, we have a situation where, I just hope we can come to an agreement. And I just hope that whatever is out there is not insuperable to where two sides are going to get dug in their ideology, and it becomes a fight of ideology, right? It becomes a fight of ideology. Hey, look, if China and the people of China want to support a government, a one-party government, I mean, Rich, what's different than the city of Detroit? I mean, they have a one-party government. How many of these, cities that's failed miserably in our country, in all this homelessness, they have a one-party government?
Well, let me throw this out just for the heck of it, Neil. Do they have re-education camps in Detroit the way they do in China?
Well,
I'm just saying, do they take the people?
Well,
and,
if you listen to the media, in the newspapers, they do.
Do they take the people? I just have to say this, from Detroit and take them north of Hessel in the Upper Peninsula, where it is bloody cold, and re-educate them if they disagree with the government? See, there's a slight difference there. I'm sorry. There's a slight difference there. But having said that, I agree with what you said. Countries have the right to exist. I'm not so sure the people in China have 100% opportunity to say, I like that idea, I don't like that idea, because they will get it re-educated. But I will tell you, it is a symbiotic relationship.
I spend a lot of time in China, and they support their government. They do. They do, by and large. They do. And, hey, look, there's a lot of disagreement in our country about what sort of government we should have.
Evidently.
Yes, there is.
Right. We want to give up what the people in Hong Kong are fighting to get.
Yes, I agree. And the people of Hong Kong and what's happening to that city, I mean, it's a terrible, terrible
It's horrible.
Hey, but there's I'm not, again, being a devil's advocate, but I mean, look at our country too. I mean, look at all this gun violence, and, people are shooting up each other. And, is that a human right? That you could walk into a mall and feel safe, and that that crime and all of this stuff, and that the government is supposed to protect you. And
well, it is supposed to protect you.
And there's many ways that our government's not protecting us.
Well, it may be because a lot of the governments have their hands tied behind their back because they can't protect us, because those on certain political beliefs believe politically correct. You don't have the right to do certain things. Therefore, I mean, look at the police chief in Virginia who sanctioned a cop who stopped someone, found out he's an illegal alien, and he had a bench warrant out for himself. So he arrests the guy and brings him back to ICE, and he gets suspended. He's back on right now, but he got suspended because he broke the rule. Wait a minute, Neil, he was enforcing logic and law.
Okay, so Rich, the deal is...
There's a lot to this.
There's a lot to be done in our country.
Amen, brother.
Well, Rich, I mean, that's a very, very colorful comment, man, and I got to tell you...
Worked for her.
That was very good. That was very good. But I just want to get it out there that, we cannot always expect other countries to be like we are, right? And we must be confident of who we are, and that our ideas in what we do with our economic freedom and the wealth and the prosperity that we can create as a nation. I fervently believe that the vast majority of the wealth in this world has still not yet been created. And whatever we've been able to do up until now, it greatly pales to what we are going to be able to do as a world, in the next 20 years or 30 years or 50 years. There's going to be so much wealth created in the world. So the issue is it going to be created here, or is it going to be created somewhere else?
And is it going to be created in the private sector, or it's going to be created in the government sector?
Well, let me tell you, if America goes in a socialist path, like what the Democrat Party wants us to do, that wealth will not be created here.
That is correct.
If we maintain our economic freedom, we have nothing to fear from anybody, not even the Chinese. But we can't lose sight of that, of who we are as a people. That is my point, and it's something that I'm going to stick with, and we're going to continue to debate it. I really love being with you here today. Great discussion. Very passionate, but Rich, we're out of time. We're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.